All right, here we go. Yes, it is day 55. We are on. We have a lot to get to. Hello. Let me just switch that around. There we go. Just like that. Yes. Good morning, all. We are rolling. Yes. Big Mexico trip coming up. I'm going to be following up. You guys are going to like this. Let me just check the audio. I think the audio is good. I want to just double check it, but I'm pretty sure that we are solid. Let me just check the audio. And it is. By the way, I don't have a lisp. It's because of the mobile design. I need to try to straighten something out with the people of StreamYard, because when I listen back to some of the interviews, it sounds like I'm speaking with a lisp. I do not have a lisp. As soon as we get a few more people in, I do want to play. Boy, Jesse Waters had an FBI agent on last night, and some of the things he said were pretty powerful. There's someone that arrived here who's talking to someone else. This guy's just, I don't know what the drill is. I'm not going to give him any attention, but I'm pretty sure that audio is good. Yes, there it is. It's solid in Scotland. It's solid in Scotland. I've been to Scotland, Glasgow. I saw the. It's solid in Scotland. Oh, I do have a lisp. Goodness. Ah, let me just hear them. Oh, I do have a lisp. I don't talk that way. I don't talk that way. But it's because of the app. I'm down to the final few days. Now, big weekend, though. Big weekend. I am headed to Mexico. There'll be no TikTok live today because, where am I? Because I'm heading to Mexico. Now, this is interesting. The source that I'm going to be speaking with, his brother was killed by the cartel, and he has some good information. So let me just let's see. Okay, he has some good info. So it sounds a little dicey, but I know. But by all accounts, and I'm going to play what this FBI. Do you know how loud this guy is? This guy, he's not a neighbor. He just drove in here. He's in like a golf cart, and he is talking so loud. And the thing about it is, like, I don't engage these people because then the neighbors blame anyone that's in front of the house for the loudness. But it's this guy that just drove up here who's being loud. Hear that? Now he's telling whoever he's talking to he's divorced. That's important to know. Oh my goodness. I am not engaging this individual. I just want to make sure the neighbors know. And now he's also blocking the road. You can't park like that. Okay, I want to just find, but I want to play. Hopefully he's going to move along. I don't understand. Listen to this. Oh, that's good. It is day 55. It is. Let's see. Let me just do that. This guy is so loud. I'm not going to say anything, though. I'm not going to say anything. But, like, one of the things is, hold on. Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to play, and I believe our audio is fine on YouTube as well. Signal on video keeps stopping. Okay. Well, you got to realize boy, this is going to be a challenge today with, all right, let me just get into the Jesse Waters FBI agent. It can happen because of where we're situated. And let me just find it right now so I can play it, hopefully drown out this loudmouth. Okay, here it is. This is former FBI agent sounds the alarm on the Jesse Waters show.
Say the door was open when they first found out the mom was missing. But why are we hearing about this now?
You know, Jesse, I watched this interview several times, in fact, multiple times today with some of my colleagues, and we really tore it apart. And for the life of us, there are a lot of questions, a lot more questions than answers. And I don't have an answer for why we are just hearing about the back door. But let me just quickly go through several points. Number one is Savannah Guthrie tells us that when her sister calls her, when first calls her, Savannah goes, "You better call the police." Well, the sister says, "No, the police are here already." You know, Jesse, using common sense, if a loved one goes missing, the first thing you're going to do is call or text the people that are closest to that person to find out if you've heard from that person. That in and of itself seems a little odd to me as to why the sister or brother or anybody did not reach out to Savannah Guthrie prior to calling the police or while they were waiting for the police. There's about a 12-minute gap between the time 911 is called to the time the police arrive. That's number one. Number two is, this would be the last scenario of an 84-year-old lady who has physical limitations that anybody would contemplate kidnapping for a ransom. There was nothing that would have been consistent at the very onset to lead anybody to believe that Nancy Guthrie was the target of a kidnapping for ransom. That statement in and of itself causes me to now have a lot of questions as to how someone would have even gotten to that point from just being on the phone prior to showing up. Number three is Savannah Guthrie offered later on in her interview with some very specific facts that her mother left the house in her pajamas without her shoes. How did Savannah Guthrie know that at the time her mother left the house, she was clothed in her pajamas without her shoes on? That leads me to believe that law enforcement perhaps has other video that, quite frankly, they have not disclosed. Unless Nancy Guthrie only had one pair of shoes in that house, how would anybody be able to know that she left the house without her shoes on? That's a very specific material fact, and it caused us to pause and wonder. There's a lot of things that we just don't know.
You know, you bring up three really interesting observations. I don't, I'm not an investigator, but you know how these things go, and I can't explain the things that you're raising either. The notes, the two notes, she says, she still believes those weren't hoaxes. Well, what does that tell you?
She not only said that two of the ransom notes with specificity she believes are real, she actually also suggested that it was one kidnapper. She never refers to individuals, meaning plural. If you go back and listen to her interview, she talks about one person. And so that leads me to believe that in those ransom notes, and again, there may have been some clues within those notes. By way of example, we took your mom in her pajamas. You will notice that those pajamas are not there. We took her without her shoes. Her shoes or her slippers are still by her bedside. And so there is some specific facts that are known to law enforcement that, quite frankly, they're keeping very close to the vest. I will just say this to you, that this interview, I don't think helped the investigation. In fact, if anything, I think it may have hurt. I think it also may have hurt their credibility because there are just things that just, quite frankly, don't add up. And statistically, these cases generally lead back to someone who's within that inner circle.
Oh.
Wow. That's a strong statement, Stuart. We'll see how it plays out. Why would, putting the credibility issue aside, why would this interview hurt the investigation?
I'm not saying that it hurts the investigation, but I do believe that less is more, because the more information you let out to the general public, and obviously there is an individual, at least one individual, because we saw them on that Ring doorbell, it gives that person an individual to backtrack and perhaps cover his or her tracks. And so what my suggestion would be is that less is more, allow the investigation to run its course. I don't see any benefit to Savannah Guthrie going on national TV and kind of, opening herself up. Look, it is very upsetting. Clearly, this is a devastating situation for this family. But I'm not so sure that the investigators are in any way supportive of Savannah Guthrie going on a talk show to kind of lay out certain material relevant facts. By way of example, pajamas without her shoes. And by the way, Jesse, if you go back, I believe that Savannah Guthrie said that she heard my mother said was begging for mercy. Now, I don't know if that's her interpretation or is there a recording that was her mom pleading for mercy when she was leaving the house with whoever.
Wow. I want to, I want you to think about that, and I'd be very curious in your comments. Put in the comment is what I'm trying to say as to what you think about what that FBI agent what just said. There's several things. Again, for those that are tuning in, for now, we remain in front of the home, and it is day 55. I think it's interesting. He pulls a number of different things out of that, such as, and let's break this out. And again, whether you're right now, we're live on Facebook, we're live on X, we're live on YouTube, and so X, Facebook, YouTube. What I'd be very curious, and you can put in the comments, like, let's step back for a moment, and how would they know that? How would they know? I was saying yesterday that with an elderly person, you would know, okay, there's her slippers, here's the shoes she wears every day, maybe here's some tennis shoes. I know I don't understand, maybe if someone had even 12 to 15 pair of shoes, it would be then maybe missing from from her closet. But what stands out to me is several things that the FBI agent pointed out, which are, how would you know? How would you know she was taken without her shoes in her pajamas? I think that's fair. That has certainly opened things up. I can assure you, I'm very curious to see when the next time the sheriff is going to speak, as to if he's asked that question, and also, if what he's going to say to that, because Savannah's already kind of let it out. But I'd like to know that, and also, I think what the FBI agent also said about, and Savannah saying that she was pleading with them. So I think that is a fair question of, does that mean, is there audio? Could one of the cameras have picked up audio where you hear Nancy Guthrie and, she is pleading with her captors as far as, and those are the words right out of Savannah. So I know the big news today, by the way, NBC. So yesterday, I want to say a couple things about this. And again, yesterday they were, do you believe this? Like, I cannot believe how loud this person is that just doesn't live here, came driving up here and is just talking loud, but I'm going to try to block it out and focus. But it's a challenge. But I can understand NBC. Someone was saying like that Today Show's just trying to make money off it. Listen, she's. You could always say that. I don't think that's valid criticism. She's going to do an interview with someone. By the way, I want to thank you, Toast the host. Okay, if you walk, you can't go on the property. I will answer that question. You can't go on the property. That would be trespassing. There are trespassing signs. So I can't. No, you can't walk. But there is drone coverage. So we have plenty of drone video. There's drone video out there where you can certainly see different sides of the house, and then even the back of the house. But But the notion of, and it's Savannah's words, of that the mother, pleading with them. Now, keep in mind a couple of things about this, and that is the fact that, remember, the police don't have to share all this stuff, and the police certainly haven't shared that stuff. If they have, if law enforcement, if they captured on video Nancy Guthrie while this was going on, they haven't shared that. If they have audio, if somehow one of the cameras she had, if in fact um, if they talk about it, that's also, I'm seeing an interesting point. Was that mentioned in the ransom note? Was that mentioned in the ransom note of you like that we took her without her shoes? So that's also interesting. I want to step back just a moment about NBC. Listen, for someone to accuse NBC of just trying to make money off this, Savannah was going to speak at some point. So it would make sense if she was going to speak to someone she trusts out of the box and her own network. So for people to say NBC is just trying to make money off of this, okay, so what does that mean? So she's going to speak to, let's just say she was going to speak to ABC. Well, ABC, they would make a big deal that they have the first interview with Savannah. And what people would then say, wow, there must be something wrong that she's not talking to her own network. And then they would accuse ABC of trying to make money. If she did her first interview with the New York Times, people would say, well, the New York Times, they just want to sell papers. There's various criticisms here. I don't think that's one of them. Now, I know that there was also another segment that they ran of Savannah this morning, but I've noticed that it's really not making a lot of news. So the part about it that made the most news was, in fact, her comments and with her speaking with Hoda yesterday regarding just how she found out, what they found out. A number of things have stood out, such as, right out of the box, her brother Cameron, who was here the other day, and how Cameron, he knew right, according to Savannah, he knew right away that this was a ransom for money, and even said to her, I think this is a kidnapping for money. And a lot of people have then questioned, how would he know that before they had actually received a ransom note? So there could be an explanation to that. I don't know what it is. And then the element of the back door. Hey, Jody and Bob. Good luck today. Big Blue. You don't? I thought everyone in Michigan calls themselves Big Blue. Oh, just Blue. Oh, all right, Blue. Well, good luck. So they could win the national championship.
So could Arizona after last night.
Yeah. Did you guys catch some of the interviews with Savannah on the Today Show?
Yeah, it drives me nuts.
It does.
The word, I hate to say this,
Yep.
I like Savannah.
Right?
The word I use is mawkish.
Mawkish? Wow. I'll have to, I'm not sure I understand the context of that.
Well,
Mawkish.
because it's not so much her. She's hurting, I know that.
Right.
But it's I've seen bits and pieces of that interview on 4 different news stations now,
Yep.
not just NBC.
It's because it's the first time she's speaking out, so it's news.
But it's over and over.
It's what?
I haven't memorized all this. I've seen it so
You do. Yeah. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And, I think her guilt for thinking that she's responsible.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Terrible. Yeah. And we don't know that for a fact.
Well,
but she seems to think that. And I've heard from a number of the people in this neighborhood that was what they.
I mean, her mother was not an unknown quantity even around Tucson.
Right.
She's well known.
She is well known. Yeah.
I just feel sad and horrible. She's coming back to work.
She is going back to work. Yeah, right after Easter. I think that's positive. Yep.
So
Yeah.
Maybe that's a sign.
Yeah.
I feel sad.
I know.
I feel so. It's almost too much. It's comfortable.
I think this chapter of the story is reached its conclusion. When she goes back. Now, whether or not that's ever solved, that will be like a new chapter of it. Who's involved, how it happened. But this part of the story will end with then her going back on the organization. It will.
I've seen
So
people in the neighborhood here. We've walked around and seen
Yep.
people, and they are very unhappy, even with a couple of guys like you being here, because they're saying that every time you go online, somebody is sends somebody emails around here saying you're to blame, you're to blame. You know, they see like if we walk past, they'll get our picture, they'll figure out who we are, and we'll get emails.
I had no idea that was going on. Well, that's ludicrous, especially in light of. I mean, there's no one to blame. It's not even Savannah to blame.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is coming to an end. I'm winding down as well.
You are.
I do like walking in your neighborhood, though.
It's a nice
So you will still see me walking around. No, it's fantastic. But no, I'm winding
I
down.
think you'll actually get up this place to live. I mean, you're in northern.
I am. So I'm winding down, and especially this also gets old. Like I don't know who this guy is.
You was here
Starts.
yesterday.
No, I met the guy in this whatever this is, the golf cart or whatever. So look how he's probably probably someone's trying to come. So let's talk though, because I just don't want him to stop. I want him to just keep going. So you get people. You have? Okay. He's striking this. Okay. It is. He's just looking for someone to talk to. He's looking for someone to talk to.
Yeah, I know. That's why he's trying to talk to me.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah. And he just talked to that guy very loudly for the last half hour. But anyhow. Yeah.
Usually somebody now
Yeah.
there on the other side of the
I think you'll see it fade out. You'll see it fade out. I'm winding down. Maybe I'll move up my flight. But anyway, good luck with Michigan. Good luck with Michigan. Okay. All right, folks. Yes. Let's see. Yeah, it is winding down. All right, that guy finally left. I want to play this part though of. Oh my God! You can't be loud around here. See, this starts to really irritate me. You gotta lower your voice. Okay, let me play this part.
I guess a normal weekend for you. Yeah. The weekend your mom went missing. Tell me what you were doing and what happened. Well, I had given Mike for Christmas a boys' trip to go play tennis, and so he had been gone for the weekend. So I took my kids actually to Carson's.
Carson Daly.
We had a beautiful, fun night together, and then I came home, and really just got home at the same time that Mike came home. We were just saying hi, putting down our stuff, and the kids were running around. And my sister called me, and I said, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "No." She said, "Mom's missing." And I said, "What? What are you talking about?" She said, "She's gone." And she was in a panic. I was in a panic. I'm like, "Call 911." She's like, "I did. We've called them. They're here." And we thought that she must have had like some kind of medical episode in the night, and that somehow, the paramedics had come because the back doors were propped open.
Oh.
And that didn't make any sense. We thought maybe they came and there was a stretcher and they took her out the back. But her phone was there and her purse was there and all her things. And it just didn't make any sense. So, Annie and Tommy had already called all the hospitals, but then I'm like, I'm going to call the hospital. So then I started calling the hospitals, and the police were there and talking to her at the same time, and it was just chaos. And
Wow. Okay, I want to play a little bit more of, because it's really Savannah's own words that have really put this thing where people. I'm actually going to play the FBI agent that was on with Jesse Waters again as well, and it is. I think he raises some valid points. I'm going to be very curious. I want to replay. This is the part of Savannah talking about the terror that Nancy dealt with.
We need to do the right thing. We are in agony. Yeah. We are in agony. It is unbearable. And to think of what she went through. I wake up every night And it is unthinkable that those thoughts demand to be thought.
That was the first clip that they had played to talk about it. But I want to replay. And again, folks, it is day 55. My coverage is winding down. I will be returning to my lovely home in the Northeast. Now, I do have a different couple of days ahead, though. I am headed to Mexico. There is something, a lot of focus seems to be on the border. I'm going to follow up on something. I don't know about the dynamics of going live from there, but I'll definitely have video. So, but I want to replay because I think that the interview that Savannah did, I don't think it went. I agree, it didn't maybe go exactly the way that she thought. And before I replay the FBI agent on Jesse Waters, I want to just read this of Savannah Guthrie fears mother was targeted because of her fame and thinks that the ransom notes were real. Alarming new details concern emotional three-part interview. Okay. Disappeared, possible struggle, early fears of kidnapping, belief ransom notes sent to the family were real. Randy Sutton, retired Las Vegas policeman on the ground, handled during a significant impact on the case. Troubling scene inside her mother's home, multiple factors, foul play, doors open, one had been propped open, blood on the front doorstep, and the home's ring camera had been yanked off. Sutton said the prop door open is a critical detail. Interesting piece of evidence we had not heard before that's true. Investigators are dealing with multiple areas within the home, entry points, bedroom, blood found, complex case. He pushes back on speculation the scene was staged. Question is, was the scene staged? I don't believe there's anything that points to it staged. Now, not everyone believes that. It's how it was no shoes without her medication. It's how is it possible when making videos speaking to a kidnapper took an 84-year-old woman the dead of night in her pajamas? That was Savannah saying that. Let me see if I can play some of the audio of this guest that was on Fox. I think his name is, if I have this right, is Randy Sutton. Let me see if I can pull up some of that audio because I think that is interesting. Let me see if I have this. Again, it all starts to get a little bit old with the. Oh, okay. I think we have it. Here we go.
Savannah Guthrie revealing new chilling details about her mother's abduction, now saying the back door of her Tucson home was propped open, adding new questions about the subject who appeared on Nancy Guthrie's front porch, had also checked out the back. Her back was very bad.
Oh, this gets so old. Oh, here we go.
Adding new questions about the subject who appeared on Nancy Guthrie's front porch, had also checked out the back. Her back was very bad. There was no wander off. And the doors were propped open. Yeah. And there was blood on the front doorstep. And
Oh, it keeps locking right there. Let me give it a second. Oh, it's because I could see the bar just drop down to one bar. I am not going to miss the Wi-Fi here. I think it should play right now.
Randy Sutton, now retired Las Vegas police lieutenant and founder of the Wounded Blue. Randy, good to have you here. This brings up so many more questions. We already had a lot. But the back door being propped open, what are you able to take away from that?
So a couple things here. This is interesting information. So you know that Savannah was made aware of this by, of course, law enforcement. Now, my question is, if there had been signs of forced entry, we would have known that from probably this particular interview with her. So clearly there was not. The question is, did Mrs. Guthrie, the victim, did she routinely keep her door open for ventilation? And that's a possibility that we have not received any information on. Or if there was no forced entry, then she clearly left her door unlocked. And the question for that is, was this routinely done? So, but the question is clear that this was not a forced entry. That was a real big clue for me that did not happen.
Well, it's interesting because the police all throughout, the sheriff would not reveal whether or not there were signs of forced entry, just that they were led to believe that this was indeed an abduction based on the evidence that was there. Obviously, there's a bunch of scenarios that could have played out. Somebody could have been at the house earlier that day and somehow propped the door open, or it was propped open after the abductor left the home. But on that Ring doorbell camera footage from the front porch, we never actually saw him enter. So if he didn't get in that way, maybe he went around the back. So obviously, there's a lot of questions there. This is more from Guthrie on a question about whether or not she believes that her fame had anything to do with her mother's abduction.
He said, I think she's been kidnapped for ransom. I didn't want to believe. I just said, do you think because of me, which is too much to bear, to think that I brought this to her bedside?
Oh. Bedside.
That it's because of me. And I just say, I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Can't imagine what she's been through, Randy.
Oh, I am. That is devastating footage as far as you can see the emotional trauma that she's dealing with, and she is a victim of this crime. She and her family are victims of this crime, and unfortunately, I've seen this before, where people blame themselves for something they had no control over, and that's devastating. She's going to clearly need help to deal with this guilt that she is feeling, and my heart really, really goes out to her.
Obviously, she detailed how it keeps her up at night, every single night. She's got nightmares, but somehow she's able to maintain some sort of joy. She's got little kids. This is more from her on those ransom notes and whether or not she believes that they were real.
There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came, and I think most of them, it's my understanding, are not real, and I didn't see them. I believe the 2 notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Certainly in this case, you have to assume the family wants to believe that they're real. I'll give you a final thought there, Randy.
No, absolutely. And I wish they were real as well, but if they were, they would have provided a proof of life, and that did not happen. We do know that one arrest was made from another fake ransom demand, but the cruelty being inflicted on this family is beyond belief. And unfortunately, I believe that there's a strong possibility this crime may never be solved.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That is just a lot for them.
Thanks a lot, Randy. Holy cow. He's not wrong, though. He's not wrong. And I am going to play the FBI agent that was on with Jesse Waters. And he paints, I think his take is a little different simply because I think this other FBI agent on with Jesse Waters, I think he asked some pretty valid questions. Okay, hold on, everybody. Also, it's been, let me just adjust one thing here. Okay, a little bit better. Let me play Jesse. Well, it's not Jesse, it's the guest he had on. Now, I also just want to double check. Now, I want to be very clear. What I had said to this couple that I've been talking to that walks by is I do believe that with Savannah returning to the airwaves at the Today Show, and apparently she is going to That's interesting. They with her returning, I believe. Well, let's do this first of all. It is day 55 now here in the Pacific Coast time. It's 10 minutes of 10. East Coast is 10 minutes of 1. I always think it's good. You can put where you're watching from. Um, and you can also put in the comment if you think that the case will ever be solved. If you're watching on Facebook, you can share that you're watching. If you're watching on YouTube, and by the way, next week we're going to do a big push because our YouTube page continues to grow. We're going to do a lot more on YouTube. So if you're watching on Facebook or on X, I encourage you to just find the link to our YouTube channel because we're going to really lean more into our coverage on YouTube. And the amount of people following us on YouTube has really grown dramatically. YouTube. Okay, I like that. You can also, well, I can actually tell what device you're watching on. Oh, good. Let's see. I'm going to check one more thing before I play that. Again, folks, it is. I think when with Savannah going back to the Today Show, and she's already now done the interview. So I think those two things are going to start to move the story as far as it is very possible that, but I think, and it seems to be, that someone thought that they could do this and get away with it. But they maybe possibly underestimated exactly the poor health that Nancy is in. I feel uncomfortable using past tense, and I've noticed that on the Today Show, like some people noted that Al Roker was talking in the past tense. But it is day 55. We remain on the ground. I just think it's easy. Keep this one steady shot. That's the shot that everyone kind of has known. And again, but make sure, let me just check. I want to check a couple things here. Let's see. Okay. Oh, good. I like that better. There we go. Nice full screen. We don't need the borders. And then remember, next hour, we're going to be live on the radio. But so what I'm going to do, and again, is after this broadcast, we're heading to Mexico. And I'll tell you why. Because I think the more we've learned and the more that I've been here on the ground, and I continue to learn more. I think what I find really interesting is the possibility that it was, in fact, someone who, and we talked about this with Jamie, how there's a lot of individuals who they get a special visa where they can work here in Arizona, and they live in Mexico, but they come into Arizona. Now, they can't come in all the time. It's supposed to be work related. But if let's just say there were a couple of them and they were working on a job. Now, I know they were looking at construction jobs around here, but I was speaking with someone yesterday that said that, like, this person, he had some construction work done on his home and it was closer to the border. And so what he did was, when they got the construction people he was working with, they got some of the Mexican people that they got special visas for 3 weeks and they put them up. So they were allowed to stay here in Arizona for a period of 3 weeks. Now, they worked 6 days a week, Sundays off. So he thought it was interesting that this stuff was happening on a Saturday night. Now, they couldn't, it's my understanding, they couldn't go back and forth like every day, back and forth. But they came into Arizona. They were here for 3 weeks. Then whatever they were doing on the construction project, then they went back to Mexico. So I think that's interesting because I know that there's a big focal point on the border for, like that night, that day. But what about somebody that then left a week later? Or what if someone had an alibi of, yeah, I was in Arizona. He said the project that he had them working on, they were much closer to the border. So, and I want to pull up, and I know the camera's inverted, so it's not going to see it perfectly, but I want to just show you where I am right now. And that's why I'm going to Mexico later today. I'm going to be there for part of the weekend. So I think at least you could follow. See, I'm at the blue dot, and then see, because it's inverted, you can't really see, but that is Nogales. Nogales. So, and there's Rio Rico. Let me see if I just quickly if I can, because there is a way that you can invert um, a photo. Okay, let me see if that. Yeah, there we go. All right, I'm at the blue dot, and Nogales is the border. So I'm going to be heading over there, and I'm going to show you where we're going to be going to. Um, it's it's a little bit into cartel territory, but um, that's where it's very possible where I've been told that they get a lot of these workers. So could be a little dicey, but we're going to go to that area right there. That is, I think the pronunciation is, hold on, it's a little herky jerky here. It's not near the Green Valley. Sarita. No, no. We're going to go there, and then that's it. Magda Delena D'Aquino. That's where we're going to be headed. Now, he told me that the only downside is it's heavy cartel territory. Magna, uh, however you pronounce that. So, well, listen, we got to go where the story is. And right now, there's been a lot of activity at the border. And so I believe that could lead to some clues of what happened. So, and the guy that I'm meeting up with, again, his brother was killed by the cartel. So he knows a lot about it. He doesn't think it's necessarily cartel, but could be someone somehow who is affiliated with them. So now, folks, again, we are live right now on Facebook, where you can send stars. Remember, on YouTube, you can do super chats and super stickers. Just make sure you follow. I'll see what the Wi-Fi situation is. The man that I'm meeting up with, he does not want me to go live because he said that then they could track down where we are and feels that could be a danger. So we're gonna see. There are some beautiful parts of Mexico. There's some beautiful parts of Mexico. So now remember, next hour we're going to be live on the radio. I want to thank many of our sponsors. Well, listen, that's where the story is. That's where the story is headed. And so what I plan to do is a series of videos that will, take us and follow this. Because as I've talked about, not so much today, but the past couple of days, there's just been tremendous activity regarding helicopters. And they go from helicopters and the copters, the Pima County Sheriff helicopters then go. They end up, hold on. Okay. They been going right to the helipad at the FBI Phoenix headquarters. That's a good shot of the home that you're looking at right now. But this was when the day of. Okay, Pete says we're good to go. The day of. I think that's a good shot. You can see how this street was lined with people and so forth. There's Allison Pearson. So that's the only thing. I know some people have been asking me, are you going to be live from Mexico? But the person that I'm meeting up with said that it would be much safer if I wasn't live, so then they can't track exactly where we are. I am reading the comments. I'm reading them right now. I'm not going to read every comment. I can't talk and read all the comments. Who just put no? John doesn't read the comments. G Ferraro. Well, I'm reading your comment, and that's not true. G Ferraro is spreading a falsehood. No, that's not true. If I wasn't reading the comments, I wouldn't see that someone is saying he doesn't read the comments. So I don't, like I said, I don't read all the comments, but I just read that comment. So you can't say that I don't read. John doesn't read the comments. I'm reading that John is reading the comments. So no, we don't I do read the I read as much as I can. You can't, and I challenge some individuals to try to oh okay, let me try that. Try to talk while you're reading comments at the same time. It's not easy, if not impossible. You get distracted that way. So I can't always read every comment. I communicate with Debbie and our mods, and they let me know if there's something that I should be reading, or I like to acknowledge anyone that sends us a super sticker or something like that. But I can't, especially when we're going to be on the radio live in just a couple moments. So, folks, several things I do want to thank and remind you about Capital Fence. Capital Fence online at capitalfenceri.com. I'll tell you, he does tremendous work, and it's the owner, um, my friend, Mike Rizzo, who Riz just is the best. And so, whether it's Rhode Island or Massachusetts, you can depend on Capital Fence and online at capitalfenceri.com. He does a fantastic job, and I strongly remember there are various things that people can do that can protect their home. And one of the things that you could do is remember fencing, lighting, various things like that. They act as a deterrent. And I've talked about that. I noticed a lot of people in this area, and again, we are in the Catalina foothills, right here outside the home of Nancy Guthrie. I will be playing the Jesse Waters sound in just a moment. But one of the things I notice is a lot of people have the protection at their driveways. So whether maybe it's a gate installation, durable automated gates that they open just like your garage door does, most trusted for privacy and security. But call my friend owner Mike Rizzo, capitalfenceri.com online, or call him 401 618 4407. 401 618 4407. Free estimate for Capital Fence. I also want to remind people now, at the bottom of the screen right now, I have details on DePietro.com. That's the links to all of our social media. So if you log on to DePietro.com, then you can see and find our link to Facebook, and find our link to YouTube, and find our link to TikTok and Instagram and X. It's all right there at the website, DePietro.com. Now, we're going to start in just a moment. But I also want to remind you about, and I appreciate for those in the Rhode Island, Massachusetts area, stop by the Lodge Pub and Eatery or K's. Stop by and see them. The Lodge Pub and Eatery, 40 Breakneck Hill Road in Lincoln. Remember what we say: lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. You're gonna love it at the Lodge Pub and Eatery. Delicious food and drink right there, the Lodge, and don't forget about K's right off of 146. So for the next hour, I'm going to play the Jesse Waters sound of that FBI agent. And then after the show, I am headed south of the border. This is an individual I've been communicating with, and there has been a lot of activity between the border and FBI Phoenix. And so, at the very least, there are some individuals. Granted, he did say some of the areas are a little dicey, but we'll see. And so, I'll try to post updates when I can. We're not going to go live for security reasons, and unfortunately, we're going to be in an area that is heavily controlled by the cartel. So we'll have to be extra cautious. But, we'll take it slow and kind of go from there. And I think it'd be interesting. I do want to talk to people to find out if they're following the case, they're familiar with the case. And more importantly, I'd like to find out if, if anyone has any type of information about the Nancy Guthrie case. So that is something, and then we'll post videos when we can. All right. Again, visit depetro.com. Also brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. As we'd like to say, lunch, dinner, drinks, and lounge, they're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. You keep hearing about the high price of heating oil. High price of heating oil, gas. You know what's still very affordable? Propane. And propane plus. Call them today, serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts, 401 885 4209, or in Massachusetts, 508 252 3359. Always online at propaneplus.com. So, right now, as we speak, on this day 55, it is true, we are live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube. Everyone on Facebook should also be following the YouTube page. Everyone on X should be following the YouTube page. If you're on Facebook, you can share that you are watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you, as they call it, subscribe, become a member. But also support Propane Plus. They're available 24/7, always online at propaneplus.com. Now, I want to play. I think this is pretty provocative. I think it's pretty interesting. This is retired FBI on with Jesse Waters on Fox. His views regarding the Nancy Guthrie case, and seemingly, before I play this, I'd like to approach these stories. You can't have blinders on. Some people do. Some people really don't like the sheriff. And some people feel, the sheriff has completely compromised the investigation. And there's a lot of, he has made missteps. But I want to play. This were the words of Savannah. This is retired FBI, and he was on with Jesse Waters. So let me play this. This was on. I caught it online.
Jesse,
I didn't catch it live.
Stuart, when you hear her say the door was open when they first found out the mom was missing, why are we hearing about this now?
Jesse, I watched this interview several times, in fact, multiple times today.
Stuart Kaplan.
With some of my colleagues, and we really tore it apart.
Former
and
FBI.
For the life of us, there are a lot of questions, a lot more questions than answers. And I don't have an answer for why we are just hearing about the back door. But let me just quickly go through several points. Number one is Savannah Guthrie tells us that when her sister calls her, first calls her, Savannah goes, "You better call the police." Well, the sister says, "No, the police are here already." Jesse, using common sense, if a loved one goes missing, the first thing you're going to do is call or text the people that are closest to that person to find out if you've heard from that person. That in and of itself seems a little odd to me as to why the sister or brother or anybody did not reach out to Savannah.
I want to just stop that for a moment, only because what he's not mentioning, under normal circumstances, that may be the case. However, they had just had dinner with her the night before. Just had dinner with her. They had just dropped her off, what was it, 14 hours before that? Or, yeah, thereabouts, about 14 hours. So I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Why didn't you check to see if Savannah knew where she was? They were with her for 4 hours on Saturday night. I think they had a pretty good handle. I'm sure it also maybe they had checked in, I don't know, with Savannah, what have you. I don't know how often that she texts, but I don't know about that. Of you were just with the person on Saturday night. Your husband dropped her off. She went back into the house through the garage. And then are you really going to say to Savannah, "Hey, do you know where mom is?" It'd be like, what are you talking? Like, that part I'm going to push back on a little bit. But again, let's let it continue. This is Stuart Kaplan, former FBI agent, on with Jesse Waters on Fox.
Anna Guthrie, prior to calling the police or while they were waiting for the police. There's about a 12-minute gap between the time 911 is called to the time the police arrive. That's number one. Number two is...
Well, hold on. they can't control what time the police respond. They called to say their mother was missing, was not in the house. So okay, so they responded. I don't know how that is on response time. I wouldn't say, maybe that's a little bit longer than you would think. If you contacted the police and said there's someone outside my door with a weapon, I'd be willing to bet they'd be here within 3 or 4 minutes. But someone calling, there are a lot of elderly people that live here in the Catalina foothills. And so, I mean, just while I've been here, there've been several, as they call them, silver alerts, where someone decides to go for a walk, they lose their bearings, and then they're essentially lost. And then, thank God they've been found. But my point is, it's they didn't say, um, it was urgent. You're calling, hey, something's up. Our mom is missing. I'm willing to bet Pima County Sheriff, they get a fair amount of those calls, especially the more time that I've been here, the more that you realize that it is a lot of elderly, health, much, um, big elderly population, and I'm willing to bet they get a fair amount of those calls. They may even get a fair amount of those calls about the same person, like multiple times a year. So, all right, let it resume. Former FBI on with Jesse Waters.
This would be the last scenario of an 84-year-old lady who has physical limitations that anybody would contemplate kidnapping for a ransom. There was nothing that would have been consistent at the very onset to lead anybody to believe that Nancy Guthrie was the target of a kidnapping for ransom. That statement in and of itself causes me to now have a lot of questions as to how someone would have even gotten to that point from just being on the phone prior to showing up. Number three is Savannah Guthrie offered later on in her interview with some very specific facts that her mother left the house in her pajamas without her shoes. How did Savannah Guthrie know that at the time her mother left the house, she was clothed in her pajamas without her shoes on? That leads me to believe that law enforcement perhaps has other video that, quite frankly, they have not disclosed. Unless Nancy Guthrie only had one pair of shoes in that house, how would anybody be able to know that she left the house without her shoes on? That's a very specific material fact, and it caused us to pause and wonder. There's a lot of things that we just don't know.
You bring up three really interesting.
Let me just push back just for a moment. I agree. The pajamas is interesting. Or you guys, if you're watching, again, we're live on the radio, AM 1380, 99.9 FM, but if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can put in the comment. There's parts of that I find interesting and the question is, how did Savannah know what she was in? That is an unknown. Is there a video of that? Did they capture that? Or did one of the ransom notes mention that she was in her pajamas? I think that could be difficult unless, like I was saying this yesterday, is it possible that over dinner that Nancy mentioned, boy, it was kind of chilly last night. I left the window or door open. So tonight, I think I'm actually going to break out my, just as an example, blue pajamas. Not to be disrespectful, but anyone, if you've ever been around elderly, there's limited things that you talk about. There's limited things. She had all her wits about her. I think the shoe thing is easier to track because I know someone, and they're saying, like, how would you know with all the shoes? But anyone that knows and has dealt with elderly individuals, and I'm not just going to go personal, but because I've interviewed different people, but older people that, especially someone that has back problems and, she has sometimes trouble walking back and forth to the mailbox. The days of wearing a lot of high heels are gone. When you see the photos of Nancy Guthrie with Savannah, she's on the Today Show, and at the restaurant, she seems to be in very sensible types of shoes. A lot of, people have, I remember my mom had foot trouble as she was getting older. So my point is, she didn't have 5 pairs of shoes she used to wear. My mom had, I don't know exactly, but pretty much like 1 or 2 pairs of shoes, probably even just one. And then, so I don't think for someone to say, how would you know of all the shoes? At that age, I don't think she's saying, oh, let me get my, yellow kitten heels that match this outfit. I think when you've seen some photo and video of Nancy Guthrie, she's just wearing comfortable, for lack of a better phrase, but like sensible shoes. So I think if you go in and say, no, wait a minute, you know, or her friends could be asked. Every time we saw her, if we came over in the morning, she was in those, I'm just as an example, pink slippers, and the pink slippers are here. Every time we came over, she was in those, blue or gray shoes, and the shoes are there. So I don't think that one's as difficult. I think it is interesting about the bare feet, though, and how Savannah would know that, unless they were able to determine that all of her footwear was there. All right, let this continue. Again, this was this former FBI agent on with Jesse Waters.
Observations. I don't, I'm not an investigator, but you know how these things go, and I can't explain the things that you're raising either. The notes, the 2 notes, she says, she still believes those weren't hoaxes. Well, what does that tell you?
She not only said that 2 of the ransom notes with specificity she believes are real, she actually also suggested that it was one kidnapper. She never refers to individuals, meaning plural. If you go back and listen to her interview, she talks about one person. And so that leads me to believe that in those ransom notes, and again, there may have been some clues within those notes. By way of example, we took your mom in her pajamas. You will notice that those pajamas are not there. We took her without her shoes. Her shoes or her slippers are still by her bedside. And so there is some specific facts that are known to law enforcement that, quite frankly, they're keeping very close to the vest. I will just say this to you, that this interview, I don't think helped the investigation. In fact, if anything, I think it may have hurt.
Wow.
I think it also may have hurt their credibility, because there are just things that just, quite frankly, don't add up. And statistically, these cases generally lead back to someone who's within that inner circle.
Wow.
Wow.
Whoa.
That's a strong statement, Stuart.
Whew.
We'll see how it plays out.
Listen to this part.
Putting the credibility issue aside, why would this interview hurt the investigation?
I'm not saying that it hurts the investigation, but I do believe that less is more, because the more information you let out to the general public, and obviously there is an individual, at least one individual, because we saw them on that Ring doorbell, it gives that person an individual to backtrack and perhaps cover his or her tracks. And so what my suggestion would be is that less is more. Allow the investigation to run its course. I don't see any benefit to Savannah Guthrie going on national TV and kind of, opening herself up. Look, it is very upsetting. Clearly, this is a devastating situation for this family. But I'm not so sure that the investigators are in any way supportive of Savannah Guthrie going on a talk show to kind of lay out certain material relevant facts. By way of example, pajamas without her shoes. And by the way, Jesse, if you go back, I believe that Savannah Guthrie said that she heard my mother said was begging for mercy. Now, I don't know if that's her interpretation, or is there a recording that was her mom pleading for mercy when she was leaving the house with whoever.
Wow. That is, again, wow. That's former FBI. And everything he said, some of it seems pretty harsh, but I'm curious what people think about that. Now, I want to remind people, some people don't realize that police don't tell us everything about an investigation. And some people, and that's fine, but I see comments of people, the police are withholding things, or How come the police aren't? And we've kind of covered that. I think when we had Jamie Copenhaver on the other day, Jamie, I thought, did a pretty good job of illustrating. He wants to. They call it, they want to protect the integrity investigation, but there's all they're looking to do. Remember, most times, and I don't think enough people realize this, if they didn't need the public's help, they wouldn't be sharing really anything. So the only reason they have shared any details is because they do in fact need, the public's help. If they didn't need our help, they would not be releasing any details. And something that I also think comes into play is, and I think some of it's warranted, of this business of, and you kind of saw it with, and I think the Guthries may be uncomfortable about this, but first you're asking for the media and the public and everyone to, and you can't put a price on how much airtime all of the networks have devoted to this. And so, at the same token, as I try to say, when you turn that spigot on, you can't suddenly just like turn it off. You can't suddenly say, we wanted everyone, the media, the public, we wanted everyone to pay attention and spread the word and try to find our mom. Okay, but now we don't want anyone to talk about it anymore. When that happens, and someone did send me, I'll even say this, and I've been a big defender of the family, and the fact that seemingly, um, I, I have found that when people want to criticize where, the fact that people want to criticize that people were looking at the family, I'm very big on, you got to follow where the police are, and if you follow where the police were that Saturday night, the police very aggressively went over to the home of Annie and, as they say, Tommy or Tommaso, and they took items out in bags and they did tow their vehicle and they were taking pictures at night. And okay, we're not running the investigation, the police are. And why did the police feel the need to do that? And what was that all about? And as people have said, what was in those what was in those bags? So now, folks, I also, just a reminder, listen, it's very challenging trying to do a broadcast from where I am. And as I look between the flies and the hot weather, it's not an ideal place. And then let alone the Catalina foothills, it's not an ideal spot to do a broadcast, but we're trying to get through it. As I mentioned, we're live right now. I'm going to be heading to Mexico to follow up on this potential cartel lead. And then next week, although I will be here, we will be winding down our coverage. So, but just, I do understand. Listen, if you're frustrated that sometimes if someone sent me an email, can you please move? It's picks up like you think there's very limited areas and spots where we can go that we're going to get good cell service here. Brian Enton of News Nation, one of the top things he always complains about is the lousy cell service in Nancy's neighborhood, on her street, and so forth. That's just part of life here in the Catalina foothills. So we'll do the best we can, folks. This portion of the program, listen, ideally and very soonly, I will be in a studio with hardwire connection, and you don't have that type of problem. And that will be happening. But when you're on location and you're on assignment, you have to kind of go with the flow of how some of that stuff operates. And so, like, it's no mystery to me. It is a challenge. It's been a challenge. That's one of the things actually I won't miss about being here is the poor self-service. I'm not used to it in the Northeast. Basically everywhere for the most part when I've been, we enjoy good Wi-Fi cell service. But that's just where we sit right now. This portion of the program is brought to you by Serve Pro of Providence. Remember, if you have a disaster, contact Serve Pro 401 941 5500. 401 941 5500. Serve Pro of Providence. If you have fire or you have water damage, if you have a fire, you're going to have water damage. You're going to have smoke damage. You're going to have fire damage. And then they need to put out the fire with a lot of water. So you're probably going to get mold. Serve Pro of Providence, 401 941 5500. They're available 24/7, fast, thorough, and professional. It's Serve Pro of Providence, 401 941 5500. So I do agree with that FBI agent of some of the things that Savannah said do raise more questions. And one of the things that people are talking about is that her brother, Cameron, immediately said I believe this is a kidnapping for ransom. Now, if he didn't say that, where do we get? That's what Savannah said. That's what Savannah told Hoda. And I'll be curious if Savannah will do other interviews other than just within her NBC family. I don't know the answer to that. We don't know the answer to that yet. There'll definitely be offers, but will she sit down with someone from Fox? Will she sit down and do an interview with the New York Times? I don't know. But I realize now I've been saying Savannah needs to speak out. She has spoken out. It's raised more questions. I would like to see Savannah do an an interview, but outside of her network, because I get that she felt very comfortable with Hoda, and they're both very emotional, and it was gut wrenching. But I do agree with people saying there were some questions that deserve more clarity. I think is a good way to describe it. More clarity, and I, I I think I think Savannah Guthrie doing the interview with Hoda was the first natural step. But I'd be curious now if she sat with two writers from the New York Times, or if she sat down on Sean Hannity's show, or if she was on with Dana Perino or whoever, or Stephanopoulos. Now, as we're here, here's a truck arriving here at the home. I don't think I've seen this truck before. So, for those that are watching, someone just pulled into the driveway, and this is the first activity that we've seen here at the home. They came up again from the other side, and you'll be able to see when they emerge from the vehicle. We'll see who it is. I don't know who it is. This truck I don't recognize. I recognize some of the trucks coming around to the other side. Could be like a workman, maybe. I don't know. Let's see from over here. Nope. Could be some kind of a workman. See the pickup truck right there, but we don't know. If you remember, we were live the other day with when Annie and Tommaso, and they had a hard time. They were on the phone with someone. By the way, it was Cameron. Okay, so this is interesting. I think I have seen this individual before. He's going right up to. Is he walking the property? Yep. Going around to that side. He's checking right there. Boy, they've spent a lot of time on this side of the property. Okay, and I realize actually I'm still on the radio. If you're on the radio, I'm sure you're wondering what happened. It's just we're not used to a lot of activity here at the house, and let alone this individual came. I maybe I'm not sure if I recognize who it is. I don't think that's Cameron Guthrie. I think I'd recognize if it was Cameron Guthrie. I realized if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or X, then it's totally fine. But I did forget that I'm also live on the radio, and good radio is normally not accompanied by a lot of pauses. So, and I also want to show this is a neighbor. You do a great job, but she stops and fixes all the very good. Fixes all the flowers. We'll give her some privacy. So it could be a work person, and I think that's interesting, though. Did like what happened where they felt? Did something happen where they had to send someone out to check something here at the property? That's an unknown. That is an unknown. But we had no activity yesterday. The day before, that was Cameron and Annie that were here, and they removed Nancy's car from the garage. So suddenly someone shows up in this pickup truck. He walks that there's a little catwalk right there in front where you can go right from the garage around the house and then to the other side. I'll walk down. I mean, might as well. I wanted to also show, we do have the no trespassing signs. Those are new, by the way. Those are new. But they've had a lot of work done. They did a lot of work on the left side, and that they also put a new camera up there. So that led to a lot of speculation. Is that how they got in? But now we're hearing that it's possible that a door was left unlocked, or that the back door was propped open when the family got to the house. So it's still an unknown. So whoever this is, now that leads to around where the pool area is. So you have, for those that are watching, the area that you see right there, that's a little courtyard. And there's two sides of sliding glass doors. One lead into the living room. The door is straight ahead. That leads to the master bedroom. So it could just be some work person of some kind. It's unknown. So we'll stay, we'll just watch. But it would be interesting if the family comes back, because as Savannah talked about, both Annie, he's back into the front. So he walked around. There he is. She talked about how Cameron is the one to kind of size up for her, that he immediately regarded it as a kidnapping for ransom. So there's the individual. So who knows? It could just be someone doing some work or something on the pool. But it's definitely someone who belongs there and has some access to the property. That's for sure. But he did walk all the way around. I'll just watch back again from the front. But as I was mentioning, something that I took out of the conversations that the Today Show ran with Savannah and Hoda, something that I took out of that was just the role that Cameron plays in the family. And based on him being a former fighter pilot and military, I believe that he probably played a larger role within dealing with the police and law enforcement. I think so, than we initially thought, especially since he seemed to be the one, according to Savannah now, that he seemed to be the one to immediately kind of size up the situation and then say to Savannah, that's what she said. That's what she claimed. Um, Not to sound like Michael Scott, that's what she said. But Savannah's the one that said, according to her brother, he immediately said that he thought it was a kidnapping for ransom, because she told Hoda, I should say, that she said, "Do you think this could have something to do with me?" and that it was potentially like a kidnapping for ransom. Again, I'm just going off the words. Maybe if Savannah does another interview, that could highlight a little bit more. She may not do any other interviews. So it'll remain kind of an unknown. But when I heard that, and based on, she also said military intelligence. Keep in mind, you know, police are paramilitary. He's real military. So we don't know, but I'm willing to bet that Cameron, I've said this, I think he played a larger role, if not the lead role, in dealing with the police on the case, dealing with the police, dealing with the FBI. I think that he played a larger role where everyone was focused on Savannah because she's the known person. I think that actually Cameron, the more we learn about him, he was probably the individual that was dealing with Pima County Sheriff, was dealing with even probably the FBI at some point. Um, I would be more inclined to think, based on what she said, when you think about it, that was kind of the role that he had in the family as the only boy. And I'm not going to say he was passive, but if you're a fighter pilot in the military, uh, that's definitely a certain personality, right? Like that's like it's not a perfect example, but it's kind of like Maverick in Top Gun. I mean, that was just a movie and a character where Cameron Guthrie was the real thing. So no, we do have some activity here. There's some people that have arrived and they're just looking at the house. I mean, I do feel for the neighbors because it is not stop of people that want to come, that take pictures of themselves. Some bring things, others just like somebody has now like a sign of some kind or something. But I'm not gonna show them because they can take pictures of themselves or they can just put things out. So in the very beginning, when I was here, right on camera crews, which are going to act much less of that now. And so I'll just let them figure it out. There's a sign that says for any notes or anything like that they want it in a box. Some neighbors put that up. They're going to give it to the family. But I'm willing to bet these people that just showed up and they made a sign. I'm willing to bet they're not going to put it in the box. They're just going to want to they're going to want to just display it. Like, what's the point of making a sign if it just goes into the box? But we'll wait. They're conferring right now. Folks, this portion of the program, and again, it is day 55. We are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. This portion of the program, and also AM 1380 99.9, but it's brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike. Call them today, 401 443 5336. Call them. Now, Kids Club on the Pike, they have activities. They have preschool, they have daycare, they also have before and after school activities. Kids Club on the Pike. Call them. Now, they have several locations. Their main location is, in fact, right there off of 295 on Plainfield Pike on the Cranston Johnston line. But Kids Club on the Pike, 401 443 5336. Again, Kristen, now a break coming up, you may want to contact them to then have, because they have all different types of camp and activities for children during April vacation, or maybe you want daycare options, or maybe you want preschool options, or they also do before and after school care. Kids Club on the Pike, 401 443 5336. So, a couple of things about the Nancy Guthrie investigation. I think there's so much, and I don't blame people for not knowing this, but it's not. There's so much that we don't know. There's so much, even after this interview with Savannah and Hoda, and it's very possible Savannah Guthrie's not going to do any more interviews. It's very possible she's going to return to the Today Show, and she's just going to. Her attitude today that I saw was along the lines of we can't let kind of like we can't let them win. We can't, and the families rallied in the past when their dad passed away. Her and her siblings and her mom, they rallied, and so it seems to be, and that's probably healthy. That's probably healthy, and you can't fault her for that. Went on to say she kind of, she really appreciates and understands the unique situation she's in with her colleagues, with her role on the Today Show. It's real with her and Hoda and Craig and Al Roker and Carson Daly. Um, to me, you got a sense that it's real. These are people that they get along, and there's they genuinely like each other and get along. I'm not sure it was like that when it was Katie Couric and Matt Lauer, but it just seems as though she's going to get on with things, get on with her life, and I don't know what's going to happen with the case. But just to recap, because people have questions that I'm not saying that they're not good questions, but it's just we don't have the answers to the questions, such as here's a really good logical questions. What was in the ransom notes? We don't know what was in the ransom notes. She believed two of them were real. Now I've heard speculation about that. I've heard speculation on what people thought was there. One I heard was a demand, and then I did hear someone speculating that in a second note the kidnappers actually apologized that they didn't realize how frail Nancy Guthrie's health was. So, but who did this? It sure sounds as though right now, where we stand, unless there's some huge uh, difference here that takes place and someone, just comes out of the blue and this is a completely different scenario than what we thought. It sounds right now that they are under the impression that this was a kidnapping for ransom that did not pan out because Nancy is no longer with us. So, and that is possible. Remember, not everything's a perfect crime. This could have been some harebrained scheme. We're going to grab the lady, we're going to hold her for a couple days, and then we're going to get the money, and then we will return her. And it's very possible that they did not know the frail health that Nancy Guthrie was in. As far as, when Savannah talks about that she would struggle, what you're looking at for those that are watching right now, um, it sounds as though she didn't really use the front door a lot. And she would go either the garage or the back driveway to the mailbox. And some days, because of her health, that was a struggle. That was not easy to do. So the fact that Savannah, she needed daily medication, and the sheriff said that early on. There's it is unknown. The door propped open from the back door propped open. Is that because, as someone stated, she liked the night air? Because it really cools down. And I do notice that at nighttime, people like to have the windows open to get that cool desert air. It's not that I always just keep it on central air, but I've noticed that a lot of the people around here, they want that fresh, cool desert air at night. And so that's kind of what that would make sense. And also that people around here, that they routinely leave their doors unlocked, and they're in the habit of leaving their doors unlocked. And she's lived in this home for 50 years. So, but one thing I do want to point out is it is odd that if in fact the back door was propped open, then why did they take her? Why do we have the blood in the front? That is an unknown. So that is a total unknown as to why that is. Folks, this portion of our program, I've noticed so many beautiful outdoor landscapes around here because of the weather, and people can spend more time outside. Watson Materials. Call them today, 401 885 0600. I can't wait to see Sean when I get back. The most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island is Watson Materials. I want to thank our mod, Debbie. What do we have? All right. YouTube is alive. Thank you. Cubics, a painter with the super sticker. Thank you. Thank you. Remember, on YouTube, we have our super chats and super stickers now. I want to walk down so we don't know who this is. It is someone that is supposed to be here, does have access to the house, and there is someone as we speak that is in the driveway here at the home of Nancy Guthrie. I still think, and I still talk in present tense. We know, I just find it odd to already talk about her in past tense because so it's some kind of a workman. Maybe that's something with the I mean, I don't know. We'd speculate. One thing I do want to point out though is this also demonstrates it's very, very common that there now right now what you're looking at for those that are just tuning in. So this is her driveway. These where all the flowers are at the mailbox. I could give tours at this point. And then you see a work truck that we saw him pull up that's in the driveway. But something that I want to point out is it's so common to see different workers at these homes. Many of these homes, for those that are watching, first of all, everybody's got a pool. So they all have pool people coming by. Um, a lot of people, this is what you're looking at is the Catalina foothills. It is a desirable area. It's an exclusive area. It is people that want to show that they've arrived in the world. I've said, I mean, this to me, if you could pick a spot to live, it's so much different than the rest of Tucson. And it's people that want to be one with the desert. And so my point is a lot of the people, they're constantly having work done in their home. And so you see a lot of workers that come in and out of this area. Now, folks, I will be returning soon to the Northeast. And there's so many people around here that they focus on health and their health. And someone that we talk to, I call her the queen because she is so dedicated and she has dedicated herself. And it is our friend Marie at It's My Health. And hello, Marie. Happy
Hey,
Friday.
happy Friday. I hope you're enjoying Tucson. I worked down there for a while. It's a cool place.
It is. It's very different. Now,
Yeah, it
we're
is.
now, Marie, we're officially into spring. People have
Mm-hmm.
different ailments. It's the change of season.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, thank
We
you.
do.
Thank you.
It is allergy season. It is allergy season
Yes.
already starting for some people. The trees haven't quite started yet. It'll be a little bit, but people are already feeling it. So even if you haven't started with them, a good thing to start with this product here with the quercetin. You start
Yep.
it early before allergy season starts. It's got nettles in it too. You start that early and it can help you through allergy season, make it less of a pain. So I highly recommend people start now. If they haven't been taking quercetin because of immune system, then start taking it now so that you can be ready for allergy season. And then as it hits, we have lots of homeopathics. This one here is specific to tree pollen. So, if your season is trees, if just general, we have other homeopathics. And then if it's all in your sinuses, we do have some herbal stuff that works really, really well. So it's allergy season, but also people getting outside, starting to clean up their yards. They'll start to have some muscle pain for muscles that they haven't used in a while. So I highly recommend Arnica. So we have Arnica in cream and gel. We have it in tablets. And then of course we have CBD as well. So things to help with this change of season. But we're about ready. We're ready for things to start exploding here in greenery. So it's coming. It's coming quickly. The birds are here, hearing a lot of birds in the morning, and that's exciting.
Marie, what's happening Super Saturday at It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland?
So a really nice strengthening Pilates class. We have a very nice Amrit yoga class, which is a very gentle meditative yoga, great for beginners, but great as well for advanced people because it is very meditative and very gentle the way it's done. And then I'll be here the whole day working with customers, helping to find products for them or help them to figure out things that they need. Today, our acupuncturist is here. He's here on Mondays and Fridays. So, and we now have a craniosacral therapist, Kim Negro. So if you're in need of craniosacral, it's another great modality for healing.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and you are the queen of health. Marie, so good to see your smiling face. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You as well. Enjoy Arizona. Take care.
Thank you very much, folks. There it is, Marie at It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. So now, as we were chatting with Marie, I did see that more helicopters went overhead, which again, that leads us to that we will be heading, when I finish, we're heading down, I keep saying we, but I'm heading down to Mexico. There are some leads regarding the Nancy Guthrie case, and I have been in contact with someone, and I'm going to go over the border. The only thing they've requested is not to go live because some of the areas we're going to be going into are somewhat sketchy, so to speak, or dicey. And so there is one area where he's going to take me that is heavily infiltrated with the cartel. But I believe now that the trying to get answers on this case, I believe now that those answers could be south of the border. So there will be no TikTok live today, and then I don't know how long I'm going to be down there. So at least probably a couple days. We'll see about the broadcast. I mean, if there's an opportunity that I could go live south of the border in Mexico and not, I'm not trying to find myself into any trouble, then we'll do that. But now again, for those that are looking live right now, that this is the driveway of Nancy Guthrie. It is day 55. That is a vehicle that arrived. Seems to be some kind of a worker. As far as I know, this is the only activity other than when we were here the other day, Cameron Guthrie and also um, Annie Guthrie, they came, and to me it looked like they took Nancy's car, took their mom's car. And then there was very nice, the people that came. Oh, that's very nice. Look at that. I think this is, oh boy, okay. They have a rest in peace. She has not been officially declared deceased, but that's still, nevertheless, that's a nice drawing that is done. And then you see again all these signs, and then they have. I want to be very clear. The local neighbors have been terrific, and they have organized this. There's a woman that comes every afternoon, and a woman that comes every day, and they try to keep this looking nice. And it's nice that it's a lot of just artificial flowers, and it's not the real flowers that, as much as initially they look good, real flowers die, and then they get problems with animals, and then they have rodents, and then it was causing somewhat havoc. So I think the big news of the day to me, as we just walk the property a little bit, and my coverage here is winding down. As I've said, I am going to see my family for Easter. I want to figure out, I want to see how Mexico goes. And then as of right now, I am going to be here next week, but I'm not, it's not oblivious to me. There's different stories that I am interested in. I know that people are drifting away, but what I find interesting is, number one, I mean, I believe there's still interest in the case, number one. Number two, it is still unsolved. I think many times these types of stories, they go into different chapters, and this part of her missing has been what I would call like chapter one. I was also mentioning, oh, good. Thank you, Debbie. I want to thank Zully G. There we go. There's our YouTube crowd. You know, I can't tell you how much. I don't know why I didn't see that on my screen um, with the super chat. I don't know why. I can't tell you how much I do appreciate when people on YouTube, when they say, yes, I want to support what you're doing. I like the coverage. I can recognize that you're out there. And but I want to remind people, like people say, you know, I wish they could find her just so the family could have closure. This is still an unsolved crime. This is someone came into that door, someone, you know, in that doorway and left here with an 84-year-old woman. And we still don't have answers as to with what happened with that. And there needs to be accountability. Things don't work that way. I'm very curious now. Now, while I was speaking with Maria, another helicopter went over. Now, these are Pima County helicopters, and they go back and forth from the border to FBI headquarters. And as I have kind of stated, maybe some people don't realize, but if this whole case now goes south of the border, that is not easy to investigate. I don't think people, I know people don't realize. And I've given the example. It's one thing like the guy Luke Guthrie, you know, they stopped him. They were going through the Range Rover. They seized his Range Rover. They sent the SWAT team to his house. That's one thing, right? He's local. He's here in the Tucson area. He's actually in the Catalina foothills. But how does it work if there's someone south of the border that you want to question? That becomes a little more complicated. Folks, something that the people out here really could use is the work of J. Perry Paving. I mean, but I'll bet in the Northeast, you know, the roads, your parking lot, driveway been beaten up from the bad winter. Rhode Island, Massachusetts, J. Perry Paving, 401 732 1730. Request a quote from J. Perry Paving. High quality, fair pricing, exceptional service, 20 years experience, specializing commercial paving, residential paving, free estimate, any project. Give them a call. J. Perry Paving, 401 732 1730, 401 732 1730 for letter J, J. Perry Paving. And remember, they have a great package for veterans. No one's better to veterans than J. Perry Paving. If you're related to a veteran, if you're a veteran, maybe your mom or dad or son, call them because they have a special package just for veterans. 401 732 1730. You can also find them on social media. It's letter J, J. Perry Paving. So the interview that Savannah Guthrie has done, it is now aired on the Today Show. She is now, they've now announced she's going to be returning after Easter to her, you know, role at the Today Show. And so that right now is what's going to be, you know, that's where the trajectory of that with her is going to go. So now if you're listening to the radio, great job by Pete. Again, stay tuned for the top of the hour news. I do want to mention, I just came across something on, X that I want. Oh, look, another helicopter. Another helicopter. Now that's the third one this hour. Another helicopter. And those are the Pima County Sheriff helicopters. So now that's headed to Phoenix FBI helipad coming from the border because that's the way to the border. Huh. I want to, I think this is interesting. Nerdy addict, Pima County Sheriff's deputy was arrested kidnapping case tied to an incident March 19th. A Pima County Sheriff's Deputy, Travis Reynolds, involving a woman taken in the Pima County Jail. According to the probate cause, Reynolds allegedly made sexual comments to her while on duty, parked in the jail, removed her from the vehicle, changed her handcuffs from behind her back to the front. He later kept her in handcuffs, got back in the vehicle, smoked a vape pen with her while talking, suggested he could help with the case if she did favors with him, including sexual, oral sex, showing him multiple explicit photos. Woman said he showed her videos, implied involved himself. She felt scared. Women told investigators she repeatedly said she wanted to go inside the jail. He delayed bringing her in. Video from the jail reportedly showed the vehicle arriving 9:46. Reynolds changing her handcuffs, sitting in the driver's seat, holding an object toward the back seat, not taking her into the jail until 11:26. What were they doing in the vehicle from 9:46 to 11:26? The report says detectives reviewed the phone, found evidence, corroborated the victim's account. He denied knowing the woman beforehand, said he may not have shown her videos, but he couldn't remember. No bail, Pima County Sheriff Deputy. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, that's obviously very odd. So listen, everybody, thank you. Oh, okay. Other people have it. Oh, is that him? Wow, he looks like a real creep. Yeah, there he is, Mary Coleman. So here he is, Travis Reynolds. Yep, that's him. He's the guy that we just read about. All right, now listen, everybody. Thank you. We'll see how it goes. I am Mexico bound in the search for Nancy Guthrie. We'll be posting videos here on YouTube. We'll be posting videos on Facebook. Listen, I think, as I've said, to me, a lot of the answers we could be looking for are found south of the border. We're going to be heading into cartel areas where I will not be allowed to go live for security purposes. But I have been in touch with some people south of the border, and they feel that at the very least we'll get a sense of what people think about the case and maybe learn more. So listen, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And again, we're going to be watching. Make sure you follow on Facebook and YouTube. No TikTok Live today. We are Mexico bound.